So, we've had a creative weekend.
We had a really creative weekend.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah, Taz has been here since Wednesday, but we've been doing creative stuff since Friday.
Yep.
Friday midday, basically.
Yeah. So, we started out by doing like a brainstorm session.
Yeah.
Where at first, initially we started trying to do it together, but then we were like, okay, let's try to do it apart first, like have completely like fresh, like, because we hadn't talked about
Not at all.
what we were gonna do this weekend.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like I suggested, maybe we do some creative coding, music, but
Very
that was
vague.
it. Very vague, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we sat, what was it, half an hour?
Yeah.
Half
Maybe
an hour?
longer.
Maybe
yeah.
even longer.
We each came up with a wad of ideas.
Yeah, we have, like, this is some of the stuff that I came up with, like 2 full pages.
I have probably
and here we
a
have
ton of
all of Mark's ideas. There's more on the table here. And yeah, after we did that, we were both kind of exhausted, actually, I think.
It was pretty intense.
Yeah, just like thinking of so many different ideas.
And just discussing it also and explaining it to each other.
So we needed a break after that.
Big break.
But yeah, and it felt overwhelming with so many possibilities of what we could do.
Right, in such little time, relatively speaking.
And after that, I think we took a little break, like tried to feel what would make sense to do. And we came up with actually trying to do a lot of ideas. I'm trying to say, because a lot of the ideas were about trying some tool or just a little bit more experimental.
Short experiments. One of the emphasis was trying to be done or be finished with something, work on something to a minimal degree to call it done and not dwell too long, particularly on anything.
Yeah, and also throughout the weekend, this is also something that we kind of came back to in our discussions and conversations and some of the videos that we've watched, that this emphasis on trying to finish things is really, it's something that's hard, but something that can be really helpful in, like, I think both like driving the process and motivating, but also feeling that there's progress maybe.
Yeah.
That you get something done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Avoiding getting stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we decided to try a lot of different things, and we started out with Hydra.
Yeah, which is this graphics website, basically. A very easy way to create interesting, dynamic graphics, which is what we're showing here in the back. And we just spent some time playing with this.
And we got a fancy little triangle rotating. And so this is some of the stuff that you did. I ended up messing more around with the camera features. So I was doing like a screen recording, but also then kind of by accident, Mac and iPhone, they do this thing where when you try to launch the webcam, it goes to the iPhone. So I actually had my iPhone here and was like filming the screen share. So I started getting like these feedback loops, which made some really interesting, weird visuals. So yeah, I was really happy to find that kind of thing, because I really love when you get these unpredictable feedback loops.
Right.
That's something I really think is fun. Yeah. But it was a bit weird, like the whole syntax and stuff, so I still feel like there's so much to learn about it, even though it's relatively few like features it has. It's still it feels a little bit like, you know, modular synthesis, where you don't necessarily know exactly what you're doing. You're just like plugging some stuff together and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Which is fun. It makes it very experimental.
Yeah. I still think we went definitely from 0 to 1 with it pretty well. Like, we're not experts by any means, but we know some things that are going on now, and I've reached the surface of it.
Yeah.
In a way that's
so it will be easy to do something next time.
Yeah.
And next day, I woke up early. You slept for a while, and then I started just working on Tone.js, which is something I've been wanting to dive more into lately. I have played around with it a little bit, but I still feel like there's so much. It's pretty powerful. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. So I didn't feel like I grasped it totally. And then you woke up and I showed you what I had done and everything. And then you got excited too about trying to do some stuff with it.
Yeah.
So what I had done in the morning there was I tried to do so it's a synth, and then you can do a custom waveform, and then I wanted to be able to change that waveform over time. And I did manage to do it, not in a super controlled way. Actually, it ended up being a random waveform, which is also an interesting concept. I don't know if that I've heard of, like a synthesizer with random waveforms before. So that's interesting output. And then the other thing, what was that even? I guess that was later in the day, wasn't it?
Robot noises.
Yeah, so you were doing some stuff.
Yeah.
In the meantime, my other product was later, right?
Yeah. So I spent also most of the day on this, trying to understand what Tone.js offers, and I ended up building this little application to sort of experiment and see. And it generates a random melody with a single synth, and then also generates a random drum pattern. But it generates both of them using the same technique, using this loop feature of Tone.js. And so to generate both of these parts of the sound, there are some constant elements, like there's a note generated every beat on the synth side, and like a kick and certain drum elements that are generated very consistently. And then there are some other layers that are less consistent and happen with probability. And some of these features are controllable with the UI, with sliders to determine the probability. And that ended up being a fun way to explore the tool.
Yeah, you had a little musical piece that you could actually interact with and like change the energy of it over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was very cool. Even though it's pretty simple, it's already like something performative where you could actually, you know, make a little performance in a few minutes only with that. Two sliders pretty much and like a mute button.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't need much to actually do a little performance.
Exactly. Yeah.
After that, then I tried, I'm even forgetting what it was. It's like the other Tone.js thing. So it was a random melody. So it's a sequence with random notes each bar, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Each time the sequence plays through.
Yeah. It will randomly add or like remove notes in the loop. Yeah. Yeah, that was what I ended up doing. My goal was to make something where you could gradually choose what you want and what you want to remove. But yeah, that will be maybe the next iteration. Yeah.
What was most surprising to me is how good it sounded, despite there being no knowledge of scales or theory or anything.
Yeah, it was literally everything random. No scale. It could choose any note from any octave, and it could be at any time out of 16 steps.
Yeah.
So even though it was like that, still sounded somehow musical.
Right.
Even though maybe on the edge of musical, still it did have a beat.
it didn't sound obviously bad, which is surprising given that it's just really just random.
Yeah.
Yes. And you could even hear little melodies within it sometimes that even sounded kind of pleasing.
Yeah, yeah. So, next day, which was today, right?
Today, yes.
Then we started out the day by doing no code, because that's one of the interesting ideas that we were talking about doing. We tried to do an app with Bubble.
With Bubble, yeah. And we were using Bubble to implement one of the other ideas in the brainstorm, which was that of a kind of creative coach or digital coach that provides structure so that you don't need to provide your own structure when doing a creative process. Because sometimes it's hard to provide your own structure and do the creativity. And so it's nice to lean on other tools for this that might provide you notifications or guidance and enforce structure for your creative process.
For sure.
Code.
Yeah. So it was interesting that we, like, this new way of thinking with the no code is you're so used to thinking with variables and with functions you can define and everything. But now trying this no code, there are parallels, of course, many parallels, but also it is a different way of thinking.
Right.
And I still don't think that we quite figured out like what is the optimal way to do it.
Right.
Without running into problems where you have to do a lot of copying or run into weird bugs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was impressed with how kind of quickly we were able to do stuff. We used it for about 2 hours, and by the end of that time, we did have a really basic version of kind of what we were going for.
Yeah, and it's a little bit, in a way, the opposite of when you code, because when you code, you kind of get the core logic of the app first, and then you have to build all of this other stuff like UI and the back end for put it on a website or whatever.
Yeah.
All of the other stuff comes afterwards. But here you already have all of that, and then the thing that is hard and takes time is actually to make the logic.
Yeah.
Logic.
It all kind of happens at once almost. The data comes a little bit early because you define a little bit of the data that you have.
Yeah.
But then these UI elements kind of, they exist at the same time as when you kind of make the logic a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I think it's an interesting platform.
And we made a little experiment where we found out that it is really easy to implement something like a P5.js sketch into the no code or the Bubbles website.
Right.
So it opens up possibilities of doing some creative coding or doing something in another library, and then pretty quickly having a full app where you can have payment, you can have users and database and everything.
Right.
So I think it opens up some cool possibilities for actually making small products and small services that you can share with people really quickly.
Right. Yeah. So I think that was a pretty good success, actually.
Yeah. And then
we wrapped it up. We went outside for a bit, and then came back, wrapped it up for one kind of last thing. We just made some music.
Yeah, simply
making music was one of the. We had a couple in the brainstorming session. We had a couple of shared ideas that we both independently brought up, and just making music together was one of them.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy that we got to do that.
Yeah.
That was really fun. And I think it's interesting how through our process, a lot of the time we've been kind of doing stuff separately, but it's still, sometimes we just could bounce thoughts off each other and questions and ideas, but other times it also, here at the end we did manage to kind of work somehow independently, but then put it together at the end to one thing.
Right.
and actually surprisingly cohesive, I think.
Yeah.
It did actually come together pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. We were using Ableton Link a lot. We were doing that this morning also, just on our phones or at some other point.
We forgot about that actually.
That was pretty fun too, or like last night or whenever it was.
And it was also part of our ideas to do some smartphone music.
True, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
So
yeah.
we discovered.
I went through like all your apps.
Yeah, I showed some of my cool apps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all in all, really fun, exciting weekend where we did lots of different stuff.
Yeah.
And did manage to finish some small prototypes and yeah.
Yeah, I think it was really fun first of all, and we learned a lot of stuff too. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Until next time.